To the office, it seemed like fully this to be months and feet. Sometimes basically.
There was a natural consequence, and
They don't have the ability to think about it.
that's something actually. I like that. Well, that one you can. So. So far, it's been on the so thanks.
So they're not.
She doesn't say.
But Bel-Air's not. Purchasing and warranty is not, your contract.
Except, but, except, with all measures that.
No, they're going. I'm very still. That's the first time.
You're good.
Yeah. Oh, your sickness. That's what. Okay, are you videotaping?
Yeah.
Did you want permission to bring on since
I was told we already had it. I'm here on behalf of someone who could be here.
Okay,
Yeah.
great, no problem, yeah.
Okay.
And typically, like, when or someone's gonna videotape you, so they just. Recording, but,
Okay.
yeah, no problem. Yeah.
It's already done. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yes, I figured one up. Yeah.
of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Here.
Here.
Ethics purpose item E, report from closed session. We actually have two items to report out from closed session. The first regards the, field pursuant to board policy 5117. And the board is in closed session, the board considered an appeal on the inter-district transfer request. The board received information from the parties and deliberated. The board voted to deny the appeal. The vote was unanimous. The board directed the administration. And then on the item C2, the public employee dismissal, board has action to deny the appeal, made direction from the side. What does this item have? Approval of the agenda. Those things are for the agenda.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Brings us to public comment. This is the time when members of the public can address the board on any items within the board's jurisdiction, whether they are on the agenda or not. How many public comment first? Is there anyone who wants to make a public comment at this time? No, you have no public comment that is submitted in the hand, not the email. It is from the business point of view. Yeah, this should be that one. Not hearing any other people for public comment right now. I will just state the rules for public comment and case public can comment on individual items when they come up on the agenda. On those, any resolution to be heard by the board, I'll first be recognized by the president and then shall proceed to comment as briefly as the subject permits. Individual speakers are allowed 3 minutes to address the board. And we vote the full time comment. Each the board has an agenda. Are there any questions? I have a motion. Move that we remove. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended. And remove the agenda. First reading. I wanted to bring up that on item. Last one, that our I would say it was second optimism. I know, yeah. Whatever we, I just thought. I think that's fair. I've read it as that outcome would not necessarily be solely recommendation. I think that could be a good point, but, working to the point, well, then I, when you just remove that, there's separate. The next paragraph. Says the board provided correction according to scale of. Four thirty two, anytime not eight. So maybe we just remove the description of what. Or we, I think in the agenda for that meeting, that recommendation was written out. And I want to go to the agenda. I feel like there was a paragraph that gave description about what it is. Following the next passport. I find within long term. So maybe we can, what you're saying is just cut and paste that. I think so. I mean, I think that this is reflects what it's asked for, sort of came up with. The presentation was a variation of that, but I feel like this description is a fair representation of essentially what was presented. So your comfort is not that, then it. Yeah, I think that this is actually a very good recommended. That they thought. So maybe just cut and paste in that agenda. And then I was just going to say that under item 4 of the meeting unit, it was a little confusing because we referred the board policies to the meeting. It's just how it's laid out. The Sarah, what I was suggesting is the first paragraph about the should be given under item A, and then the rest. And then you fix the typos. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as needed. Okay. For this information items, each information item will follow the sequence below. Noted. First item, first presentation, then questions, then comment, and then vote. Favorite way, works from the PTA and the foundation. I'm gonna go first. Hey everyone, I'm Nikki. If you guys don't know me, I'm the executive director for these foundations. I'll just bringing forward. I'll wait until Sarah gets there. Running out right now. I'll understand the pizza in 1 second. So our March meeting update. Good next slide, Sarah. Just want to give you guys a family giving update. As of right now, we have 459 donations in with $1.802 million in. So we just hit that a few days ago. So we just hit the $1.8 million mark. We have 64% participation. And I just want to give you, I wanted to just point out our callers from the microphone, not speak, and I'll give you one thing, but
Obviously, if you look down at the list, we had significant dollars in from these callers, and it's always an amazing evening. We held it last Thursday. It's just like one of the most impactful evenings of the night. It's probably just power calling and texting for 1 hour, and we'll just the results after that evening on the next slide. So I just want to go over. So prior to this night, family giving stood at 413 donations with 1.693 million in, 57% participation. After the phone bank, we had 457 donations with 1.797493 in, with 63% participation. So just one night of phone resulted in 44 new donations, $103,000 in, and 6% increase in our participation. So when I say this is one of my favorite evenings, there's reason for that, but it is just a wonderful, just a high impact night and just a camaraderie beside that. This is amazing. And it's really just the parents there doing all right. So it's just a wonderful thing. And then just now coming to our last initiative for family giving. So we are doing the Great Pizza Participation Challenge. This contest will run March 23rd through April 3rd. I will be sending those notes out to the principals so they're aware when we're going to launch. But we have all of our grade level donor tokens in place. Now it's going to work is that the highest rate with the family, highest participation rate of families, of the families within that grade is going to actually win the pizza party for the whole entire grade level. So we'll be rolling that out within the next week and just getting the calls out to the parents. And this will really hopefully, drive our family participation numbers to what we need to do for the year. And then on Thursday, we will sing our Leadership Circle celebration at Gondola Kitchen. We are celebrating donors that give $10,000 and up. Just wanted to give you guys some context. We have 40 donors at that level with 619,000 of those, $1.8 million actually coming from them, which makes up for 34% of the family giving. Rely on those donors very heavily. And then we will be shifting gears from our family participation to our gala. It's the Reed Derby this year. We're racing toward a brighter future. It'll be called May 9th at Peacock Gap. Dinner, dancing, gala, auction items. Jessica is spearheading our silent auction. So if you guys have any silent auction items, live auction items, wines, take it all. And we are just about to launch or send out communication to us about our family sponsorship. So this year we're shifting. When a couple of years ago we did this, so we had shifted last year. We did a family sponsorship for 2 tickets for $950 to kind of help underwrite the program. This year we really want to. I think there's been a lot of desire from the community to sit with your party at the dinner tables, and so we're offering this family sponsorship level, which is at $27.50, which will include $10 tickets. And then the opportunity to curate your own table, and then 10 months tickets for pick up and drop off from the event, and then 2 premium bottles of wine with the dinner, and then extra casino chips. And then obviously you'll get all of your names probably displayed on all of our marketing. So that is going to be sent out communication in 2 days. And just to highlight the fact that we do these family sponsorships because it really what happens is that it underwrites the cost of our events. That means that more money actually comes back from that event to our students and to our staff. So, any more questions? All right, a couple more months. Almost done. Thank you. Oh,
Hi, everyone. I'm Jessica Etchers, and I'm president of the PTA. We'll do a quick update. So at the district level, We are currently in non-meeting committee time. We have a number of executive board positions that our committee is working hard to fill. So we will have better idea of that. We are having a parent ed event, April 21st, the screen center in IRL. We're going to do it at the library this year, and the founders room, and we're going to do two different presentations. One for parents of TK through 5th graders. We'll have a short break for refreshments. And the second presentation for parents of 6th through 8th graders. You can pick one or both or whatever, but the idea is that obviously those are two different needs between those age groups. So that will be on the 21st at 5 o'clock. Our treasurers are working on inputs alignment. Currently, the way it's working right now is that each site has a different term, but different way they're using QuickBooks essentially. And Mark Matova, who's our assistant treasurer, is very staffing, so he and Matt are working together to get that all. And then we're reviewing our PTA volunteer and engagement survey. Julie Stewart, our secretary, has really been trying to gather information from me on this. The responses we're getting include that parents are wanting more direct classroom opportunities to volunteer, less behind the scenes stuff, more, with their child, which is obviously understandable. More options for working parents, meetings and lunchtime or evenings, and centralized communications. And on that note, at our meeting this coming month, we are going to have Evan McKay come and present information about Parents Fair, and then we will be discussing at Del Mar. They did gifts for our best drivers and casting guards for Valentine's Day. We did the Valentine's tree farm there. The second photo is making Valentine's tree. Their Abby O'Leary, who's the COSA for Visual Performing Arts, is putting together our show. And there will be a lot of, it's district wide, but a lot of kids from Del Mar volunteering. So there's some new spirit wear you can see at the top. As far as nominating committee, they're looking for an assistant site chair and assistant treasurer. And then the 8th grade graduation planning is underway. They've got the boat crews confirmed. The tickets for the player. We haven't gotten them yet. There's some. The show is March 24th through 28th. Your best. We need to walk and roll sleep. And then we're organizing a PTA fashion show. Stay tuned.
I love it.
The rest of this room might be on the screen. And then I think they restocked the tie-dye because that went really fast. They poured that into spirit. And then more stuff online, hats, tees, totes, all that stuff, spirit works. They also did rock and roll. They did Valentine's for the residents of Aegis. They also did a treat bar for the staff. Book fair coming up April 20th through 23rd, the family night, and the 22nd. And then Bel Air and Reed joined together to do a book drive for book exchange and and books that you're anxious to donate, or to read or Bel Air. I'll say cool. Any questions?
The administrative team. Right.
Good accessory. Good evening, thank you for having us. I'm just here to introduce this the presentation, but I want to just remind you all, our district is engaged in very focused work. Since I started this role as Director of Student Services, we engaged with FitMath to do an audit of our special ed programming. And one big piece that came out of that report was that we needed as a district to focus on inclusionary practices and look at how we're supporting our students first as general ed students. And secondly, being mindful of how we support students who are identified for special education services to do right by them so that we're always enhancing our practices and ensuring that students are getting the best high quality service as much as possible within the classroom. As part of that audit, we engaged with Changing Perspectives to bring in some professional development, and we created our amazing inclusion specialist position and hired Miss Meredith Quinn Hartman in that role. She's finishing up her third year in that role. And we're going to do our best to try to summarize some of that work, 3 years worth of work in 5 minutes. So bear with us, but also know, and I encourage you all, reach out to me and Meredith. We'd love to have you come and tour our campuses, see our classrooms, see what this looks like in the classroom, in our shared spaces all around our campus. So please know that this is just hopefully a teaser. We'd love to have you come and see what this looks like in action. So pass it over to our amazing inclusion specialist.
I am so happy to be here. Thank you for having me tonight. I'm going to talk about 3 years of inclusion practice in 5 minutes. So it's going to be a little bit of a marathon. I give each of you a Post-it note, and I'm going to pass out a sensory tool. So if you can touch it, these are all clean, I promise. And this is from a sensory toolkit that we put together for our district, for all of the teachers and students. You have a Post-it note on your table because how I like to start this is for you to think about a class that you might have taken in elementary school, middle school, high school, college that you might have struggled with. And while you're jotting that down, I am going to tell you a quick 15-second story. I struggled in school. It was really hard for me. Back in the day, inclusion has been around for a long time. But at the time I was going to school, there were no inclusive practices. If I had inclusive practices when I was a kid, my trajectory with education probably would have been different. I remember a time when I was in high school and my English teacher asked me to read my paper out loud. But it was torn apart. It was just as ridiculed. It wasn't a positive experience for me. And that's why I think that inclusive practices today are so important for students in such a rigorous district. It's important for our students to have access to all of the instruction. And inclusion really is about all with all. All of our students should have an equal opportunity to have access to our curriculum and instruction. So this is our inclusion purpose statement. I bolded some words because there's a lot. But the one piece that stands out most for me is access to resources. That's my job. My job really is to make sure that all of our students, when I use 504 and you'll write 504, have access. They have access to the general curriculum, to participation, to general demonstration of knowledge, and so forth. So I started here 3 years ago with Sam Drazen, and Sam and I have been a team. And where we started was that there was no consistent alignment with what inclusion really meant. What was the definition of it? Vocabulary of inclusivity varied across sites, and asset-based language was not consistently practiced. And what I mean by asset-based language is that really looking at strengths of our students versus areas that were maybe challenging. We also looked at our neurodiversity was also less understood at the time. Oh, go ahead. So year 1 and 2, I took, again, 3 years of information, and across the board where we really started with Sam and myself was looking at mindset. So what type of, like, how do we define inclusion as a school and as teachers and staff? Again, we looked at asset versus deficit language across all 3 sites. We looked at the different components of inclusion: academic, social, physical. We started at Del Mar really around academic inclusion. And then we defined academic inclusion. We looked at access to curriculum. How do students engage in the curriculum when they are having a hard time? How do they participate? What are the different ways they can show their knowledge? And we also looked at universal accommodations, creating conditions for all of our students to be able to access, such as sensory tools and flexible seating. And we also define neurodiversity across the board. For year 3, we still are continuing with academic inclusion, but we also, our next focus was social inclusion. And so with social inclusion, we talked about it at all 3 sites. There's more buy-in and ownership across all 3 schools, with teachers, specialists, aides, everyone is practicing it. I'm doing more one-on-one coaching with teachers, aides, staff, students, and doing student focus groups. And the mindset shift is shifting. And I want to point out one of the biggest celebrations I feel is the disability awareness program that we put in place. Our librarians are amazing. I want to congratulate them and celebrate them because they've really taken on this practice. They have stories that they're reading every month of specific disabilities, and we have resources for all of the teachers, talking points, questions, and so on. We also looked at comm zones and regulation stations in our READ classes. And I started the Q Club at Bel Air and Del Mar. It's just a little social group for at lunch once a week. It's a safe space for kids to come and socialize and connect. And it's my way of having that student touch point. So we've really moved from awareness to practice. And the next step is embodiment. And when I'm talking about embodiment, I'm really talking about moving into a practice that comes natural. Inclusion is a journey. We're not there yet, but that's okay because we're always learning. And we're supporting students, our population changes over time. And so we're continuing this practice. So moving forward, we're still building a system of ownership at each site. We're doing different lessons through the library program. We will be expanding our universal accommodations across all content areas. Continuing with our belonging practices, which is so important. Inclusion and belonging go hand in hand. And also really taking the time to teach our students these skills so they can become the inclusive change makers. And then again, I love the word embodiment because it is something that will come in time of practice and second nature for all of us at our school, our district. And
Yeah, I was just gonna say, you'll get some more data to show the impact of this work when I do my YouTube presentation in a little bit. But I think, once again, I want to invite you to come see what this looks like every day, because you can feel it. Our students can feel it, our staff can feel it, and it's changing outcomes for our kids. Meredith is shying away from some of her day-to-day work. She's providing ongoing professional development to our classified staff, our instructional coaches, our special ed aides, on how they can leverage their skills and knowledge to better support students within the classroom. She's provided targeted professional development on particular disabilities to our staff, not only understanding what they are, but how to support these particular disabilities within a certain discipline or grade level. And she's partnering with teachers when they're struggling, hitting the wall, serving students, whether that's a student with an IEP or just a student who is struggling to access, and communicating that through poor behavior, disengagement, or a variety of other things. So the work is broad, it's also individualized. And our goal is to have this be sustainable so that Meredith and I are irrelevant, right? We want it to be something that is just part of the practice here at Reed, not just for our staff, but for our students. So really excited about what we've done and where we're going. If there are any questions you want to,
I have a question. This is such great work, and I know that having tools to really change the mindset is what you're providing. And can you just remind me, because I almost feel like I want this mantra in my brain, but what an example of asset versus deficit or, thank you for asking that question. They're really asset is like strength-based. So we're looking at our students from a strength-based lens. What are their superpowers? You know, especially with students with disabilities, sometimes we tend to look at the deficit versus, okay, what do we have that is a strength? And we can work off that versus thinking deficit is they're bad, they're slow, they can't learn, they're incompetent. So it's really just changing the language, looking at our students as first, as a student, and then the disability. Does that make sense? Yes, and that, I think that's where I think we're conditioned to have labels that are deficit descriptors versus asset descriptors. And I'm always trying to think, what's the right way to say someone's, I guess, I don't know, let's say reading challenge. Yeah. Okay, so that's not what we want to say. You know, I think it's so helpful. Anyway, tools that can be shared like that, so that sharing. And that is, thank you, because those are the questions that we get from teachers. And this is a mindset shift. And it takes time, it's a muscle, and it takes practice, and it takes mindfulness to really stop and pause and think about how we are talking about students, right? And so.
Just add that, special education was designed, as well intended, with some pretty detrimental outcomes, that they, unintended consequences, right? We're going to identify these kids who are struggling or are not doing well. We're going to take them out. We're going to give them everything they need. But research and now experience tells us that these kids deserve to be in the same space as their typical peers, and that just because they learn differently or engage differently does not mean that they don't have the intelligence or don't deserve to be in those spaces. And we have to rethink how we see the kids, how we speak about them, how they speak about themselves, and rethink how we support them in different settings. So the asset language is a huge piece, and it's something that many of our teachers, once again, are coming in with decades of great experiences, but can use some support in how they speak about their kiddos. We all need them. These are no longer allowed at Delmar. No, I think that's the classroom. We get pregnant whenever send it to you. We have put them in a box in each classroom at the elementary levels, and then teachers at the middle school were given the option to select if they wanted them, knowing that these are intended to be tools, not to waste. Yeah. And so one thing we put on each box is a QR code, so it gives instructions on how to introduce them and employ them in classrooms. Meredith partnered with our OT, our occupational therapist, so that we are giving teachers language and to include these in meaningful ways in classrooms. So, yeah.
They're tools, not toys.
Any public comment? That brings us to item 3, what superintendent.
Great, lots of great things to report on. I wanted to give you an update on committees. So as you know, the Allison belonging goal committee wrapped up. Brian's been doing some great work on the school sites to start to say, okay, let's take this action plan and let's start to look at what does that look like in our school sites. Also counseling interviews took place last Thursday, so great counseling for driving to that as well. Fantastic candidates, so we have a great dilemma that tell you about the AI task force, board representation there as well, so thanks for that. The group has worked with Nicole and Evan on working on vision, working towards policies, and now getting down more to guidelines. So great to see lots of people in kind of different faces too, which is great to see that showing up to the AI task force and thinking about what does that look like for us from a staff perspective and from a student perspective. Obviously, being really different of what pre-K lead might be in that area versus eighth graders within high school. So I'm great to put lines together on that. As you know, the Mosaic group finished and wrapped up. We're moving forward there. Looking at also just the enhanced social emotional learning pieces with Bel Air continuing to move forward with social emotional learning curriculum adoption. As you know, they're piloting the second option right now, and then they'll be coming to a decision of what it will be implemented for next year. Budget advisory, so thanks to Dr. Ken. Lots of background information. As we all know, school finance is not something that people typically understand. So a lot of background information being built with that group. And then a survey recently went out to kind of understand the participants' priorities. So kind of looking at, when it comes to budgets, when it comes to looking at our financial decisions, starting to discuss what some of the priorities are there. So coming back together on Monday, and we'll be able to look at those survey results. So good work going on there. Our strategic planning collaborative will gather in the spring. And so as the board heard at the, I believe that was the February meeting, kind of an update on where we are in year 2 of our strategic plan. And so that's an opportunity for a larger group within the strategic planning collaborative to come together and to be able to give input around all 6 of our pillars, saying where are we with that and kind of input on that step. So look forward to that this morning. Visual performing arts, PT mentioned it, so I won't go too in depth there, but the biggest art show maybe in our history will be taking place April 1st, and thanks to the Celery for diving into that. It'll take place on Main Street, so we do encourage attendance there. And the Celery is working with volunteers and businesses also to contribute. It should be just a really great event to celebrate visual arts there, so I'm looking forward to that. Food service, so as you know, we added in after DC did the step away mid-year, so we added in a food service task force. We had a great group of people come together in this room, and it was really a wide range of people and lots of representation, so thanks to board members serving there, as well as vendors and kind of, I think they're kind of adjacent companies, right? So companies, food distribution, vendors, and waste management, and even Sam's food director, lots of people that care about this topic, even other Southern Maryland school district representatives. They are all of us trying to put our heads together on something that has not been a simple solution. So we did brainstorm 12 different options of things that we could follow through with, not meaning that we can only do one option. We could simultaneously work on a few of the options. Put out a survey to the participants, and we have good survey results on kind of the top options to look at pursuing. So that group is coming back together on the 18th. We'll be able to say, let's kind of look at those top options, do a SWOT analysis, and help give some advice around next steps. So that's where we are with food service. That's the committee's task force update. I'll move on to enrollment. So just a quick update there as pre-K and K numbers keep coming in. So Mr. Carr reported that pre-K is sitting at a 78 projection right now. That's a combination of totally complete applications, some that are almost registered, and then some that are coming in, they know for sure coming in, but haven't started the process. So 78, you'll remember the pre-K numbers are the 20 max for sure, hard max there as a state number. That's typically the teacher and one classified. So at this point, it's still looking at 4 classes at 78 to 81, very considerable. So we're kind of right on that edge. And you'll see, for example, the 2.8 on the resolution later because of that, right? So right now, we kind of have to operate as if there will be 4. Although sometimes right around March, right around maybe private school applications and things may get over that 80 mark. For kinder, we are getting a few more. We're projecting right now at 107. So I really appreciate the people that come together, spend their time to kind of do that above and beyond, for that area, so it's great to see. Excited about the March, PD coming up, so March 16th, professional development. Nicole's doing a great job of organizing that from that educational services, lens. We're looking at a multi-trade system of support, so thinking about what are those things that we do to help meet kids just where they are. There's also some time for some vertical conversations, which is great, kind of representatives all throughout the grade levels that will meet on one content area. So that will be great work. Also some discussions around report cards, and what maybe might be, how can we continue to modernize that. As Brian will show in the trade communications, one area that we need to dig into further, and we need to see some improvement. So, one of the areas within youth trade when it comes to communication talks about parents' desire for understanding their students' academic level. So it's timely of hearing that, and then we want to dig into it deeper at a report card level. And then I just, end on a really positive note, the big congrats to Don Walner, as they were, recognized at the state level to be a school to watch. So, big congrats to that staff. The thing that I love about it is it's not just the academic achievement that's recognized, but it's really looking at the fact that our wraps around the whole child and is in a continuous improvement cycle. You know, in a school district like ours with really high achievement, sometimes it can be easy to kind of rest in that. And so Schools to Watch analyzes, are they looking for continuous improvement and continuous growth? So that's something I think is really celebrate. So, congrats to everyone there at Del Mar for that recognition. In all that benefit. Any questions about that?
I just have one question. You were talking about sort of the objective to look at the report card and start thinking about some of the feedback we had from kids about parents learning, just a better understanding of the sort of academic level. Have we rolled out math results to all grade levels yet, or is that still, are we kind of, are we like?
Yeah, so Reading for sure, Bel Air for sure, and Del Mar soon, not yet. Okay.
So that's kind of, that's not factored into the report card, but it's sort of another layer of awareness or understanding, a deeper layer in a way, I guess, of awareness of where they are right now.
Great point. So the not family report is another way, right, to be able to, for a family to understand kind of where their student is, and kind of those checks that happen more than once through that.
I have one question around literacy. That's great. Is that all moving towards looking at curriculum change and types?
It would be, pre-K all the way through 8th grade. What's interesting is, really pre-K through 5th is kind of heavily aligned back to curriculum, and then middle school will have a different look. Just in my popping into the room, I noticed that middle school was a little more satisfied with kind of where they are versus there's a lot of, desires, wishes, and things related to the science of reading and things like that would be incredibly desirable to take through this. But all kind of leading towards that literacy roadmap that Nicole shares of working towards analyzing change. Any other comments?
And that brings us on to information from the Board of Trustees. Right, do you want to start?
I don't think I have anything, except there were two events tonight that I did attend, but I got word that Del Mar's, 6th grade basketball team won the tennis game, and, we also got second place in that tournament for the 7th grade.
So I just want to take a moment and acknowledge that this month is Women's History Month. And also as we move into spring, to wish everyone who celebrates either a happy Holly or a happy New Year. And I know that our congrats has already mentioned it, but I do think it's worth repeating just a very big congratulations to the Del Mar schools, the teachers and admin and the students for our redesignation for Schools to Watch. remember the first year that this happened, it was such a big lift, it was something we were so proud of, and so to make sure we continue to highlight it and be proud of it, because for us to repeatedly get recognized, it's such a great honor, and it's really a testament to just how hard our teachers and staff and everyone is working. And I love what you said about it demonstrates the cycle of always trying to improve. I really do feel like our three things was really important that, so I'm glad we can be recognized at the state level. With Shelby, I attended two site visits with our architects. I was able to join them at Del Mar and finish up at Reed. Maybe Shelby will talk a little bit more about that. So. And then also felt very fortunate to participate in the RUSD counselors. And Dr. McGrath is very correct. It's a very good problem that we're in. A great problem that we had. So there was just such great quality of candidates, and I felt like I learned so much from participating with our staff, and just such the need that we have for a comprehensive and dedicated, like, true counseling program. So I really give kudos to Mr. Lynch and everyone, so that we really can be providing these very important services to our students. I'm very grateful to be part of a district where we're focusing on that. I had the opportunity to go to at Reed School, the Lunar New Year Storytellers Assembly. It was quite joyful, and learned quite a lot. And then there is an E2 meeting tomorrow, which I'll report on, but on the agenda item is special education update, our SELPA update, and the electric bike. I don't know, it's like a bunch of schools are going to figure out with electric bikes and what we're doing. So if there's any specific questions you want me to ask that for tomorrow, please let me know. And though, even though it seems like a long time ago, I also did attend the JLAC Action Day. My fellow trustees. Okay.
I wasn't sure if you wanted to share updates from July, but I feel that we all attended and heard a lot of great information about the budget, and we actually were able to, I think, get some of our questions asked and see if they will hopefully address some of our legislative concerns. So I won't touch too much on JLAC Day, but it was great to get there. I attended a RUSD communication meeting that Evan led, and one of the ongoing questions is the role of Actionally, and how it meets many of our needs in some areas, but doesn't meet the broad level of needs for our full community. And so there's been quite a bit of research into Parent Square, and I think the direction from that last meeting is that we would move towards incorporating Parent Square in the upcoming school year, but maintaining hopefully some relationship with Actionally so we can migrate that data and ensure that that it meets all stakeholders' needs. So Parent Square in the long run has the most adaptability and potential for ease of collaboration and migration to other platforms that we may consider across the board for our student information systems. So it's a more robust tool. So Parent Square, and also is really helpful with PTA with point of into, you know, the value and the need for certain crossing guards. We find them very valuable and very necessary at all points in their current location. So we're hopeful that we won't see that reduction, but it is a work in progress in terms of us having meetings with our JPA as well as a number of stakeholders, I guess, who are going to participate in why these would be reduced. It ultimately comes down to the TAM district voting on where who will get to maintain their bus drivers. And so that's a few weeks down the road, but hopefully we can keep our toes on our crossing guards. And that's all I have.
I'm gonna actually, I have a bunch of updates and start with the crossing guards. So TAM is Transportation Authority of Marin. They are saying that they're gonna cut 18 crossing guards in the entire county, 6 of which are coming from us. They are talking about cutting 4 crossing guards for intersections across Tiburon Boulevard. They are talking about Tiburon Boulevard and San Rafael Ave. Talking about Tiburon Boulevard and Trestle Glen, talking about Stewart Drive, and they're talking about Neds Way. They're not cutting all of those crossing guards. They're also talking about cutting the 2 crossing guards on Avenida near Flores, outside Del Mar, the one at the school, and the one at Hillary. They're pointing to what they say is the neutral evaluation tool. We've asked to get information about that neutral evaluation tool. I believe they sent it, but I haven't seen it yet. I'll note that we had a child hit by a car at the Tiburon Boulevard and Nedway crossing this year. So I am skeptical as to what's on that neutral evaluation tool as an individual, I will say that. For people who are concerned about this, I will say that we will continue to engage with Transportation Authority of Marin TAM. Councilwoman Alice Fredericks is our representative who sits on TAM. So people can reach out to her if they have concerns. And also TAM reports to Marin County Board of Supervisors. So Stephanie Moulton-Peters is our local supervisor. So I would suggest, to the extent that people have concerns about these cuts, those are good places to reach out. We, as the school district, unfortunately, do not have the ability to mandate where the funding for Measure A funds is sent to. So we will continue to advocate on this issue. We obviously believe that those crossing guards are all crucial to our student safety and would like to see them maintained. But I would ask that the community, to the extent they are also concerned about this, speak up. And more positive news. The JPA today reauthorized the same level of bus service for next year with the continuation of the after-school program bus, which I think is good news. I will say that our buses are running at near capacity, as well as the after-school bus was running not at capacity in the fall, but now is running close to capacity in the winter. So it appears to be helpful to our community. One change will be that right now, the Lime bus, which runs from Del Mar to Puerto Madera, we are currently running 2 buses on that because we have flexibility from a pilot that was used to St. Hilary students. Because St. Hilary students are not taking the bus that's offered to them, we will not have the opportunity to run 2 buses on the Lime route next year. We can currently accommodate all of the students who are signed up, but it will be a little higher fit next year. But same level of service, so that's good news. Tiburon Boulevard repaving project is up to bid. So we are hearing that construction will start in late July, early August, right before school. Yay. And last 6 to 8 months. We expect that the first few months we'll be working on pedestrian infrastructure, for example, ADA ramps and drainage. So impacting our pedestrian crossings where we don't have crossing guards. Yeah. We are going, the JPA is going to attempt, as well as the town of Tiburon, to coordinate with Caltrans as to when our buses actually are running to minimize travel disruptions. Because to the extent buses are slowed down, we'll have cascading impacts. Tiburon Boulevard. The County of Marin is sort of leading that charge. They want to hire a consultant, it will cost somewhere in the neighborhood of $100,000 to $150,000. They have reached out to various stakeholder government agencies. The town of Tiburon has voted to explore participating, but wants a better idea of what the actual cost will be before they sign off. I don't have an update on what Belvedere has done, I believe it's something similar, I don't know if they voted. The JPA has announced that it does consider itself a stakeholder, but does not have funding, depends upon the towns for funding, so we look for Tiburon and Belvedere to fund the extent that that's required. I'll also say that RUSD has been asked. We also believe that we are a stakeholder to weigh in on student safety, not just buses, but pedestrian and bike safety as well. But the school district does not have funding for a consultant at this point. And unless this board is interested in authorizing it, which you would, I would suggest, but we could consider it, if members of this board want to consider it. But right now, we don't know exactly what that cost would be. And the county does not seem to have reached back out to stakeholder groups after doing the initial outreach. So that's sort of where all of that stands. As Austin reported, we met with our architects. We walked all through campuses with Chris on Bel Air, and Eduardo led us through all of the problems on all of our sites. It's a reminder that our roofs are getting close to their useful life cycles, our skylights are failing, our windows are failing, we have drainage issues, all things that people don't see because he does such a great job of making everything look gorgeous. But we do have real facility needs. The architects are going to be working on providing general cost estimates, talking point materials that we as a board and the district can use to engage community groups in the short term. And not too surprising in those, I think what floated to the top with the architects was what's in our facilities plan, but obviously addressing TK needs, the multi-purpose room, our portables at Del Mar and LA, which are past their useful life cycle. So we look forward to what they produce. I believe they're going to move us in very short order. They were ready to jump in. Youth services, which Dr. McGrath covered well, but I will just say my personal takeaways, which obviously we had a great group of stakeholders. I personally was impressed that our new vendor, Revolution Foods, Rev Foods, came. They sent to people who sat and really listened to what people's concern was. What they reported is that we have been able to enroll in a compostable packaging pilot. So hopefully we'll start seeing some compostable containers rolling out funds, but in many schools, because of declining enrollment, that they're not seeing the same level of staffing decreases, so it's creating more and more of pressure on our educators. One idea that was asked, because it's relevant particularly around here, is there is a bill pending around regional cost of living formula adjustments that would help some of our local LCFF districts. What we've heard is that there is no appetite or interest for that on the state level because it creates winners and losers. So all of the big state groups that would be advocating, you need to have behind that, are not going to get behind it because it would leave some people out. The LAO's office is basically looking for, I think, how they can tie dollars to equity and outcomes. So again, I think we're going to be looking more top. When I hear that, I feel more top down, like reporting up. And what they also reported is that CTA is not yet really weighed in on the budget apart from supporting community schools, which I found interesting because we're talking about that delta from LCFF to Prop 98. Governor, there's a lot of talk by a number of groups around, the governor has a proposed maneuver to withhold $5 billion plus in Prop 98 funds. What they're saying is that they're going to withhold that money to settle up Prop 98 funds, but $5 billion is not a reasonable settle up number. And settle up numbers usually are in the hundreds of thousands or maybe low millions, not $5 billion. $5 billion represents almost $1,000 per student funding to schools. The governor is proposing to withhold, and you're going to see it. You're seeing a lot of pushback on that, but it does. Last year it was $1 billion. This year it's $5 billion. So people are really concerned that this becomes a way for the governor and the legislature to balance state budgets on the backs of schools. So it's something to really pay attention to. I think you're going to see a lot of advocacy around. Again, it doesn't really impact our bottom line because we're community funded, but it is something that impacts the general funding for schools in our state, which I think we all should be concerned about. I will say, and I think Liz talked about this, that there was a real willingness to listen and consider issues that we raised, which we raised around particularly the explosion in special ed costs and what the legislature should be thinking about as a way to help districts better meet student needs without imposing so much regulatory requirements on them, and where we might be able to better support students with better financial schools. And we did hear that from many of our fellow Marie districts, so there's really eating into people's budget to support all schools. And then they also were asking a lot of questions around AI and how they can support school districts with AI and what we needed from the legislature. So they were definitely answering those questions. That's the end of my very long report. Does anyone have questions for anyone else about the report? Any public comment? Okay, we will move on to trustee considerations. The format here is the same, except after deliberation for board. To the extent that we need to vote, there will be the option to vote. And the first one is A1A, true survey.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to present this year's Youth Truth data. I want to remind you all that we made a shift this year based on staff feedback. Historically, we have administered the Youth Truth survey in November. So I have historically come here with deep dive analysis that all of our staff have engaged in, where they have diced and sliced and looked at this data, made meaning of it, and set some goals and ambition for our work ahead. We're in a different place. We just got these results in. We administered the test this year in January, and that was intentional. Our staff really wanted to make sure that we administered this after a significant amount of the school year has taken place so that we can right-size the data so it fits within the school year and makes sense so we understand the impact of our work up to this point. But with that, we have have our staff look at this in any way, shape, or form. That is our work ahead. So I'll talk about that when I get to next steps. So this is, although the data has been shared with staff, there has not been space or time allocated to actually look at it in any meaningful way. So this is kind of a first glance. I will say that we anticipated a slight shift in scores, but you'll see today that there are some shifts larger than we anticipated in certain areas. I'm going to give a broad general overview of district-wide data, and then I'm going to dive deep into each school site. I will want to also remind you that this is a really important survey for our district. Just in general, it is a good test of the culture and climate, our ecosystem, and how we're doing. I also want to qualify that this isn't a full assessment. It's like going to the doctor for a physical and seeing how well you're doing, and then knowing which areas you need to work on and where you need to look a little deeper. But we do use the metrics here in a variety of different ways in this district, from our LCAP to our strategic plan, to data in terms of driving site goals. So just wanted to frame this all for you. And I know, Trustee Before you are new, feel free to ask questions at the end so that you can build your knowledge. Hopefully you're all well versed in this, so feel free to ask questions. If we want to move on, I think it's what we like to do in education service celebrations, and I think there is some things to celebrate. District-wide, we continue to see data in all different areas, students, staff, and families, that shows that we are doing well compared to other public schools in the state of California. When I show you each site's data, I'll point out where you can see that comparison. Doesn't mean in every area, but in most areas we're outpacing other public schools in California. We're seeing a slight increase in participation. The more people, particularly families that are participating, it gets us closer to reliable data that shows really how our families are experiencing it. Luckily, we have captive audience with our students, so we're always able to get 100%. And sometimes we get over 100% at Del Mar. We're working on that. There's maybe students or staff that really like to take the survey, but in terms of family participation, we see a slight increase district-wide. And then, as I mentioned earlier today, I'm so proud of the work we've been doing around wellness, belonging, and inclusion. And there's really key data points that I'm going to present to you that shows the impact of that work for our school system. And then, in true fashion, I just want to be humble and say there is clear evidence of work that we need to do as a district and at sites around certain areas that we have dropped in or are not making anticipated growth. So as you all know, every time I want to just ground us, this is why we're here, and this data that I'm presenting today is a test of how we're doing in actualizing the mission and vision that you've set forth for all of our students in our larger community. The next slide, I just want to remind you of where this is in terms of particular goals. We use this data with our strategic plan and our 2 goals in the LCAP. Moving on, our participation, you can see we didn't quite hit 100% of students. There's been a lot of illnesses, so we didn't quite, especially in January when we administered this, so we didn't get 100%. But we got a really good sample size as well as staff. Reed, we saw a slight increase. Bel Air, we saw a big increase. Del Mar just dropped from 50% to 48%. All really good data. So moving into site specific, I'm going to start with Reed, and I'll just remind you or let you know that we don't survey our students; they're too young to take this. So the data for Reed is family and it is staff. So if we move on to family, as I mentioned before, this is the data of the 6 categories that we ask for families. This line right here is where the average California public school is. And then that graph over there is how we've done over time. That big dip was 2020-21. Won't remind you all what happened then. And we've been going up and up. And you can see in general, we've stabilized and gone up in a couple areas and we've gone down in general, according to the families. Communication and feedback is an area that we continue to need to focus our energy on, and I'll talk about what that could look like. I think primarily when we look at one thing that we as administrators have access to is comments, so families are able to provide comments as to why they pick this as their highest or why this is the lowest. staff challenges with a member that needed to go on leave. There was feedback around the communication around that. You know, we saw some great growth there last year. We saw a dip in communication and feedback this year, as well as surprisingly in resources. But generally, overall, it's pretty good data. But if you go to the next slide, as we do in all other data points, we like to do it, you know, to hold ourselves accountable to particular groups. This graph, this table shows how we did compared to last year. You can see that, you know, we had a great increase in relationships. So that's, in this case, family to teacher, family to staff relationships. We saw an increase there. Overall, great, minus these two areas that I think are going to require some attention. As we look at particular groups, we did not have it self-reported, so families would identify socioeconomically disadvantaged. We did not have enough of a sample size to be able to report out on that data. But I'm really proud of our families of students with disabilities. You can see that even in communication and feedback, it's the highest area. So I think it just, kudos to our special ed team and to the work that Meredith is leading with all of our staff. And I will say kudos to our staff who are engaging in this work humbly. And as well as our families that identify as individuals of color, you know, we're seeing some great growth there. Moving on to staff, we saw things stabilize. Anytime there's a change in leadership, there's always this just change in the culture. And I will say that this is pretty stable. You'll see this at not only Reed, but at Bel Air, we did see a dip in professional development. This year, we have asked, well, we not asked, we have dictated that teachers, you know, comply with some state mandates. We've had to implement at the elementary levels the new math curriculum, which has required a lot of professional development before school started and during school, as well as the new DIBELS, the universal screener that we've administered for pre-K through third grade across our district has required a lot of training and taken away a little bit of the autonomy that I think our staff is used to. And you'll see that that's dropped significantly. And you can see change over time. These are the big areas. I believe we emailed out the question, so I'm not going to go into the particular details, but this gets the DEI category. We saw a drop there, but I think we're going to want to investigate that a little further, considering that the feedback we get and what we see is that that is something that our staff is really authentically engaging in. It does have to do with their perception of diversity on campus and openness and perception of how others, including students and staff, feel around diversity. So we need to get some more information as to what that really means, but I think that's a data point we should investigate further. Moving on to Bel Air, we'll start off with some successes. We saw, in general, some growth in areas in the student survey and some concerning areas. You can see over time, engagement went up slightly. We're higher than the state average, but certainly not where we were when we first administered this 6 years ago. Academic challenge is an area you'll see that needs significant attention. And you'll see as we break it down by grade level and certain student groups, it's really problematic and we're going to require some attention. Instructional methods went up, and I think that's kudos to the staff at Bel Air, who, this is really around students' perceptions of their teachers' strategies and how they support them day to day. I think the implementation of the WIN program at Bel Air has been really good from our students' perspectives, our families' perspective as well. And so it's nice to see some growth in that area. The strengths of Bel Air maintain culture, belonging, and relationships. Historically have been strong here at Bel Air, and that's exemplified by our students. If we look at particular student groups though, just like our families down at Reed, our students with disabilities here at Bel Air have really strong feedback about their experiences in almost every area. Our Hispanic students, ironically, is not mirroring the trend. We are seeing that a lower amount are reporting positive percentage in instructional methods. Students who are multiracial, I think that's a student group that we're going to want to dive a little deeper into. And then if you go to the next slide, we break things down by gender, as well as grade level. And you can see clear, distinguish, I would say there's not, academic challenge, is significantly low for our boys. I mean, that's not acceptable. I think that's something that we're gonna have to unpack and understand. And I would say that even for the girls, that's not what anyone of us would want our students reporting. But you can see that the drops, the lower scores are in 3rd and 4th grade, where we can see 5th grade has significantly higher scores. So when I talk about next steps, I think we'll be having grade level teams look at this, and then also across grade levels so that they can learn about best practices and learn more about what's happening at the grade levels that they're not teaching. When we look at family surveys at Bel Air, I would say across, I think all 6 areas we saw significant drops. I think, you know, part of that is we have higher participation rates. We're hearing from more families, which is great, but I think now we have a sizable sample size that we need to take this seriously. And so just to point out, you know, I think communication and feedback and engagement are 2 areas that we need to dive a little deeper into. When we go into the next slide and break it down for particular groups, I mean, first I'll just point out we have to acknowledge the significant drop in almost every category. Once again, it's a self-reported, so we did not have enough sample size around our socioeconomically disadvantaged families. Our highest group, once again, is our families of students with disabilities. So kudos to the team here at Bel Air. But you can see significantly lower scores in our Hispanic families, as well as our multiracial. Our Middle Eastern family, which is a category that we have for the first time, a noticeable enough population where you can report out in that particular group, are seeing more positive scores, except for the communication and feedback. So that's the Bel Air family. Moving on to staff, the staff mirrors the family in that we've seen drops in all 5 areas across the board, and in some areas we're below the state average. I know that this is something that we want to better understand. I know Dr. McGrath is going to be going to the staff tomorrow to learn more about their experience and their hopes moving forward. And so you can see that we saw drastic changes, particularly around engagement in their work. So that's pride and feeling good about the work they're doing, to the staff culture and relationships amongst their colleagues and with administrator on their sites. Lots of work needing to take place at Bel Air. But as we move to Del Mar, I just want to point out, you know, we saw some drops in a couple of different areas, but did see some stabilization and some growth. Just like Bel Air, engagement and academic challenge are areas that we drop down overall, but really proud of these 3 areas, which I think goes to the hard work that our staff have been doing around creating a positive school culture and climate for our students. As we move to the next slide, you can see the changes from last year, those significant drops in engagement and academic challenge. We did get data from our socioeconomically disadvantaged students, so we have some data there which shows some really great strengths. You know, this is an interesting one that I want to dive deep into as to why this population is reporting a lower amount of positive experience with belonging and peer collaboration. So this has to do with student-to-student relationships in and out of the classroom. So I think we need to probably have a focus group with that group of students to better understand their experience and see how we can change our allocation of resources, create some different structures to positively change that. And I think that the biggest key takeaway when we break it down by grade is that there is significantly disparate scores amongst our grade levels, particularly at 7th grade. You know, when I look at this cohort and how they reported their experiences last year as 6th graders to now, drastically different. And you know, last year, if you recall, 8th grade numbers were low. We saw some increases in the performance. I think our 8th grade team
has committed to using this data to help inform their practices individually and collectively. And our 7th grade team is gonna have to do a deep dive into better understanding what's going on for our students and their experiences. Family feedback is overall positive, which I think is something to celebrate. I would say in general, the feedback from a family perspective is really positive and should be celebrated. You know, when we look at things like, you know, 89th percentile in culture, 88th in school safety, communication and feedback. So our scores went down in the other two sites, but Del Mar has gone up. I know that's been an area of focus for the staff, so I think there's some celebrations there. I think we need to have the staff reflect on the intentional practices they employed this year and see where we can elevate them, because our families are reporting a positive impact. And communication and feedback, the questions really have to do around student progress and access to information. So I think kudos to the team that have made that information available to families so that they can be the partners we need them to be in their child's education. So as we break this down, particular family groups, you know, once again, strengths in our families of students with disabilities. I do need to understand the school safety piece. That does get to sense of safety on campus around bullying and things along those lines. So I think there's something that we need to investigate there to see what families are hearing from their kids or experiencing about their child's experience there. And I think we need to spend a little bit more time understanding the experience of our families of color, because their scores are significantly different from the other groups. So next steps. I skipped out on our staff. Staff, we are seeing pretty stable feedback compared to last year. And as I said, we're not seeing the dip in professional development. So I believe, you know, they've had a little bit more autonomy with using their staff Wednesday times to really focus on department, grade level, and school-wide goals. Us bad district office folks are telling them they need to do certain things with their time as much as we've asked the elementary school students or staff. But relationships is pretty solid. You can go to the next page, thanks. You know, I'm curious to know, as Mr. Stewart will lead his staff, what the dip in culture and school safety has to do. I think we need to better understand that. As you know, while the scores are really high and we may see slight iteration or change from last year, those two areas dropped, I would say, much lower than we would want. And we want to keep our eye on that. So I've gone through a lot of data really fast, but I want to talk about next steps, because this is really this is the work that we need to do. So we as an administrative team met following the February break when we got the data, and we've created some structures and protocols of how we're going to move forward. As we always do, our site administrators are reflecting on this data as leaders, trying to make meaning of it themselves. The next layer is to bring in their grade level chairs, the school leaders, to engage in self-reflection and analysis, and then to bring this to their staffs, to get the staff looking at this data, making meaning of it, reflecting on last year's data, the goals that we set out, and setting some ambitious goals, as well as asking ourselves, do we have all the information we need, or do we need to go out and seek further information, whether that's sending surveys, bringing folks in to better understand things and ask more specific questions. The expectation is that all individuals will be setting SMART goals, so making sure that we're holding ourselves accountable, and you know, just like we do in special ed, we want to set ambitious goals and really push ourselves to impact the outcomes for next year in the way that we would hope, see increases, and also think about the specific strategies we're going to employ individually, as departments, as grade levels, in order to achieve those goals. But this is a new layer that we're going to do this year, because there are trends and patterns between schools in certain areas that require further and further attention and more information to understand. As you've seen from the questions, some of these categories only have 3 to 5 questions. And so I think we need to ask more. We need to understand what's going on. And And so at Bel Air and Del Mar, academic challenge and engagement, as you've seen, significant drops there. Communication and feedback continues to be an area. What's great here is that we can break these down by grade levels, and you can see some very distinguished or distinctive scores at each grade level. So there's some grade level teams that are doing really good work, and others that may benefit from learning from their colleagues. And then our principals are starting with their GLCs, and then to the larger staff, asking more information. We're making some educated guesses or assumptions about the professional development feedback we're getting and what the data means. And some staff have provided us feedback, but I think we need to do a little bit more digging, because while we love to give autonomy with all the professional development time, there are certain things that we need to do and we believe are important for our work. And so we have to find that delicate dance between being directive as well as making sure that we're including the voice of our teachers in our professional development planning. And then, as the data shows, our inclusion work is working. The general feeling or general data gives me the feeling that it's having the impact we want, and I would say that we need to continue in that area. We're hearing positive feedback. The data shows from our families, from our students first and foremost, and then our staff. So I think we need to continue, and as Meredith said, we're going to continue to focus on social inclusion and also building sustainability and getting the embodiment amongst our staff that they really own this work. So I know that impacts all other areas. So that's a lot in a short time. I would hope you have questions, comments, thoughts. I'd love to hear them.
Could you tell us anything more? Thanks for identifying the academic challenges. It's obviously a big area for further study. Are there any initial thoughts that your staff have about maybe what could be addressed there and what we could do?
Well, I've not had an opportunity to discuss this with the staff. I mean, as principals, it was a bit surprising. So I think that we need to gather more information. So I don't have an answer. I would anticipate that you might see me back even before the end of the year with plans for what we're doing and what the analysis from our staff has concluded. But I don't have an answer for you right now. Yeah.
I'm curious, you said this is an action item, so, one of the big, I guess, very different outcomes of this research this year is how Bel Air across the board is performing really amongst the staff. And I know that's an area where you said you're gonna go really back, and I think the blessing in that is that you, again, have to have an audience, with talking, hopefully everybody. But I am very interested in better understanding, is this a global, is this a global concern across, culture, engagement, relationships, safety, or is it one big thing driving sort of this cultural downshift, right? Is it something, or is it multiple things, or is in a perfect world it's something clear and we can help give the resources and supports to help provide what is needed. If it's a broader thing, it's a lot more. But ultimately, we want to provide as much support as we can to address the thing or the things that are kind of not going so well. And then I do think that trickles down to the performance of students, so there isn't a one-to-one relationship, it sounds like, but I guess my question is that the next step, and are we able to kind of hopefully identify what that is and how can we support, really, is the question moving forward.
Yeah, I think we need to have a direct conversation with the staff. And when I did my own analysis, it was, you can look at, you can do subgroups for staff as well. You can look at the difference between certificated staff versus classified staff. You can look at years of service, years in the district. My initial analysis did not identify any trends or patterns. So that to me looks, as a systemic, larger conversation that needs to be had. I think you start off by just putting the data there and acknowledging, we hear you, we see you, and we need to better understand what is
interface that allows you to dive into it?
Yeah, I mean, we can leverage AI to help do some analysis. I mean, what's helpful is that, people are asked, as I said, to provide narrative feedback on the areas that they score the highest and the lowest. So you can, just looking at the categories there, gives you some data point. And I would say it is rightly so subjective what they actually write. So, I think we would look for trends or patterns, and, take that information with a grain of salt to a certain degree. I think we use that to then focus next steps, right?
Well, I guess that's not very many big questions. The first is, do you think that you're gonna be able to come back and report this school year sort of on because as you acknowledged, I think, like that before we got the data plus what we're working on. When do you think you're gonna be able to come back and report on what we're gonna work on, what are our plans?
I mean, if I can be ambitious, I would say we could aim for the May meeting, depending on the agenda items you have put forth. We should, by the time, if our plans go as we hope, then our staff will have engaged in this process by the end of April. And I should be able to have a report out onto what that looks like, whether that be in a board meeting or other ways of getting that information. Yeah, absolutely. I think we owe it to our community, not just you, to have a clear response to this data. We talk about how important it is for us, and we use it, and I think we need to hold ourselves accountable. So yes, I think we could aim for May.
That would be great. I'm just thinking that I'm gonna assume, but I guess I'll ask, are we gonna stick with the same testing schedule for next year?
Yeah, that was like, I consulted with Youth Truth after we got the results, one, like, should we have expected this? Is this common? And the answer was no. I mean, they might see a slight dip in January, just by the time of year, people coming off of the holidays. Also, it's winter, but not the significant drop we saw, and these are statistically significant decreases that go beyond the time of year. But they did say it is our recommendation that you maintain the same time of year for at least 3 iterations so that you can see over time if there are some data trends.
Okay.
So that's the plan, is to keep it in January for at least 2 more years.
Okay. Because I just want to think about like the cadence of before reporting out, because before the reporting out included data plus action plans, so now we're gonna test them later. Like, I think we should be thoughtful next year. Like, I kind of like getting the data and maybe the action plan later, because it is such an important piece of data for our district. So I do kind of like that, but I just want to think about like the cadence of how that reporting out would go. So I guess that's something I'm just gonna throw to you to think about and be thoughtful.
Yeah, I mean, my only concern, I don't typically, I like, since this is it's a reflection of all of us, not just our staff, but it is a larger reflection of our staff, and I typically would like them to have seen it before we present it, but I will take the direction that you set forth, and I think it's just managing expectations, knowing that I would present data and come back at another time. I think I could also push this back next year and do a later in the year presentation with both data presentation and analysis. I'll let you talk with Dr. McGrath about what you all want, and we can make it happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
That would be helpful. And then the other question I had was, and thank you for sending the question, and I noticed, how do we pick which modules we're testing the kids on? So I noticed that we're not doing some of the modules, and who makes those decisions?
That would be me in consultation with Dr. McGrath. Some of them you pay extra for. We did, like, there was some mental health questions that we've asked in the past, particularly coming out of the pandemic. We didn't find that to be helpful in terms of being able to take any action, because it's general information that, we don't get it at the individual student level, so it's hard to know what it really means.
I
So that was one shift we made.
noticed on the academic raises the question to me, should we be asking other questions?
Yeah.
And I guess that would just be a thought that I would throw out there to you is, should we be asking different questions if we're seeing some concerning trends we want to dig into? And obviously there's trade-offs, like how many questions do kids engage with and how much does it cost and things like that, but I guess I would just throw that out.
Well, and I think that doesn't prohibit us from what we're gonna do next, which is to ask those questions of the kids just through our own
Yeah.
data collection. But, you know, that is something that we could include. There's extra costs, and then there is also, you know, test or survey fatigue that we have to be mindful of. But
Yeah,
it's an option.
I just wanted to ask that question. Does anyone else have questions? Thank you very much. Do we have any public comments on truth? Any board deliberation?
I'm happy to start. The first thing I wanted to just talk about is changing questions, so.
Is what, sorry?
Changing questions, just the tactical that I'm talking about. But in terms of tactical, I really appreciate that we have not changed any questions because we wouldn't have this benchmark and ability to recognize when we need to really dive in. So we did one change, which is timeline change. So potentially there could just be a general, January is just a different month than November. And so I think that to Brian's point about keeping it in January for the next 3 years is where we should stay if we're going to continue with youth truth as a benchmark, which it seems like we're very much entrenched in doing it. I think it's a really great indicator of when things change. So I really appreciate that we have it. Now, if we get everything else back up to level and we're still struggling in an area, then we could maybe tweak, one variable, which could be the academic challenge component. But right now we're dealing with more global things. It could be all sort of filtering and affecting that in different ways as well, even though we have seen a trend in academic challenge slightly declining. Anyways, I appreciate that, but it is nice to know that we have more questions we could ask without changing the systems. That would just be my preference, would be like, let's keep the benchmark, let's not change everything for next year so we know where we are next year. In terms of more strategic, I think maybe I'll pass the conversation to someone else to start.
Talking about the questions, I don't have a preference as whether we ask them or not. I wouldn't discontinue asking questions we're asking, because I do agree, like, it's nice to have that continuity. It's just, I found it interesting that if we're seeing an area of problem, does it make sense to ask some more questions on that so we can get some more data as to like really what's going on there, what are kids missing? Because I will say, like, that slide down to being the 11th percentile on academic challenge, that is not what this district aspires to be, and we gotta figure out what's going on there. And that's what I hear collectively from everyone in the district, so I mean, I don't think that anyone is happy with that. But it was just, that was my
I think that this aligns pretty well with our new evaluation calendar and system, because our staff is going to be really looking at like things that they want to target that are aligned with their strategic goal, and then we are going to come try to figure out what our shared goals are for the upcoming year. So obviously a lot of work to do, but I think that we're in a unique opportunity where things are aligned, where we can catch them and we can respond to it instead of react to it. So a silver lining there, I think it's that we can really spend some very specific energy on working on specific things for next year. So, but I think that this really goes to show how important our youth truth survey is. It's such an
setting that students are, asked to fill it out, because that can affect even like time of day and things, so you do have to be a little bit, try and be as consistent as possible in two factors. But this is very valuable, thank you for doing it, and we should continue to look at this very closely. Survey data is never the whole story, right? It doesn't give a complete picture, and it can be misleading sometimes. And at the same time, it's one of the few objective tools we have to get that on the ground feedback. So really need to value it.
I mean, just one extra comment is I appreciated getting the questions, because when you think of academic challenge, the question is, are we not providing a rigorous enough environment? And when I look at the questions, that's not necessarily what these questions are asking. And so I think that that's an important distinction. And so, I mean, or not even just to make a comment. It's not necessarily that we're at the 11%, so then that means like our kids are not being challenged, and it's the questions are asking slightly different things. So it's like even just the title of academic challenge is a little bit, it doesn't really represent what the questions are asking.
Yeah, it's a roll-up of sub-questions, which I think the value is, gives you sort of a perspective of, okay, in general, in this category, it's declining, but you might be able to dive in deeper into certain questions. I think what we're very fortunate to have is a benchmark that helps identify where to invest, where to focus, and I think this is a very clear, I appreciate the targeted next steps, at the different schools, there are key, clearly identifiable areas to focus on, at least amongst the student groups, and then even the subgroups, where you really feel like, okay, now I know exactly, this is targeting, where I need to focus my efforts, which I think is very, very critical. And I just think this is, again, it's data to help us, not to slow us down, but to move us forward.
Do people want a return report out as to what action steps the staff and administration need to know? Yeah. Yeah, I just wanted to talk about in deliberation and make sure that
Yeah, I really appreciate that you brought that up. I would like to know, again, what supports are needed, recognizing if we can identify anything that we can help provide direction on and support this year. I think that would be valued, and I do appreciate getting the data. I know it's hard to provide that data to the board before you provide it to the staff, because you don't want to put the cart before the horse, but the board's here to support. So it's helpful to recognize it early so that we can help support it this year.
Just a comment on the communication at elementary school level, and maybe that's part of the reporting out or whatever. So we're talking about report cards, and so you notice at Del Mar, the communication is going up, and the way that the report cards are done, and the way that they have that midterm, like check-in, and they're telling the parents to look at, like go into Alma, look at this. I mean, that's potentially something, it'd be interesting to see if those are best practices and that can like move down into the elementary schools, because the report cards are similar enough, they're just in much more detail at Del Mar. So it'd just be curious to know what is the missing link here, because so much work had been done with, especially at the elementary school level, for the grade, like all the things, and then it's just curious why that didn't seem to translate. So I'm very curious on what, I'm just curious on that piece, and what are ways we can support that in particular, especially if we're going to go into a conversation about report cards.
I just wanted to thank the parents too, because our parent participation's gone really high. Almost 40% at Reed, and almost 50% at Del Mar, and over 60% at Delaware. Like
essence, slightly more advanced version of a Zoom conference camera that could be set up in the boardroom as well. The attachment also goes through some of that estimated cost, equipment cost for this option, along with going into the impacted personnel time. Following option 1, there is a mid-tier system that's also represented. This mid-tier system, as you're seeing on the screen here, has a higher equipment cost, but also a higher staff impact on setup time. And then the option 3 is what we would consider a production quality advanced setup, again, with the highest cost and the highest setup time. I think what would be valuable is a comparison over other Marin County School District practices, both in terms of equipment and platform, based on our analysis from available board minutes and websites.
Any questions for Dr. Garrett? Hearing none, I think we'll move to public comment, and I know we have one public comment that was submitted, and then we'll see if there's another public comment.
Thanks. This public comment is from Lena Goff. She says, I want to thank the board for placing the topic of live streaming board meetings on tonight's agenda. I've been advocating for this for many months because I believe school governance should be accessible and transparent as possible for the community we serve. For many parents, attending evening meetings in person can be difficult, whether because of work schedules, transportation challenges, or caregiving responsibilities. In my own case, caring for a child with disabilities often makes it impossible for me to leave home at night due to caregiving obligations. Live streaming meetings would allow families like mine to stay informed and engaged in the decisions that affect our children's education. Currently, families who do not attend in person often have to wait more than 2 weeks to hear a low-quality, audio-only recording of a meeting they are legally entitled to observe. And while the ability to submit public comment by email is helpful, it is not a substitute for being able to hear the board's deliberations as they happen in the room real time. This is not equal access to a public forum, that is gatekeeping. But this issue isn't about my family, it's about making sure every parent in our community has opportunity to observe, understand, and participate in the work of the board. When meetings are accessible, more families can stay connected to their schools, and that ultimately strengthens trust and partnership across the district. Live streaming public meetings has become standard practice across many public agencies because it promotes transparency, inclusion, and civic participation. I hope the board will move forward with a solution that ensures consistent, reliable, and technologically current access for the entire community, such as the YouTube live streaming or Zoom access that many neighboring public bodies, including towns around Town Council and its commissions, already use to keep their communities informed and engaged. Often the improvements that make our schools stronger begin with parents and community members raising concerns and asking for change. I appreciate the board taking this step and hope we continue moving toward a district where transparency, rather than gatekeeping, becomes a priority and participation in public decision making is truly accessible to everyone. Thank you.
Any other public comment? And then we can move to board deliberation.
Is it possible to make that one better, to talk about the different options? Well, the options were helpful, just to look at them, so I think it was just them. I can't.
So I can, do you want me to summarize what the options are?
Yes.
The first option is a basic wide angle camera, entry level. It would take 1 to 2 hours to set up and staff time, and 15 to 20 minutes per meeting, and would require one person to be present during the meeting for duration. And it would require no post-video production. And the estimated equipment cost is $400 to $600. Option 2 is basically using a Logitech rally bar, wall mount, dedicated Zoom room license. It costs $4,000 to $5,000. 1 to 2 trained staff members. And video production. Audio post-production recommended.
Can I just ask, I should have asked this, but I didn't ask now, just a clarifying question of what we are currently, Dr. McGrath, could you just like lay out what we are currently doing and what staff time is and cost?
That we currently have audio only recording. One manages that and processes it after the meeting, has to adjust for volume levels and that sort of thing. Gets it to best quality possible, posts that, on the list.
And how, the typical average time, so our board meeting is on Tuesday. Typically, when is it posted on our website?
The expectation is by a week. And I wouldn't say that we've met that every time. For sure, when we had mid-winter break, we had an extra time in there. And I think from the time the board meeting occurred to the time that was posted was 17 days, considering mid-winter break in there. But 1 week is the expectation.
And if we were to move into any of these systems, what is the expectation? Like, it's gonna be running live, but then is there a recording that we put up for people to see who don't watch it live?
I assume there would be also similar sound and processing that would need to take place before this.
So it would be about a week, like, people could watch this live, and then it would be about a week to get it onto the store. And then another question I have is do we have any sense of, can we even measure like the number of people who may have, like listen to a recording? Like, do we know on average, like how many people listen to it?
I did ask, yes, and Daniel pulled how many times it was clicked, so we don't know for sure if they listened to a little or the full thing. But the total clicks since the beginning of the school year was 16.
For every meeting, or just 16 clicks for the 5 or 6 meetings?
Total. When Sarah saw the data, she was teasing me that 5 of those came from members. So,
Average is 2 or 3
total.
clicks per meeting.
Okay, thank you I should have asked that during question.
And so one more question would be, just so I understand what we're talking about, is there a proposal or a discussion around allowing public comment and questions through live streaming, or this is a one-way versus interactive?
Yeah, so the board looked at meeting formats one time already, and at that point, it was decided not to hear comments through the video, and then the board asked for more information around what would it take to do some sort of video live stream.
One way,
One way.
not interactive.
You're right.
Yes.
Okay, just confirming that.
Yeah, because we can't limit who makes public comment. We also have to, per program, if we open it up for video comment or online comment, you have to like basically open up like a 15-minute block, and you'll just sit there for 15 minutes if you didn't receive it.
No debate,
Yeah, I'm just
clarifying what this is, yeah. And to that point, I would say, it's great that we're looking into this. I think given the listenership we have, the lowest staff time option we can find to not impact our staff for something that currently gets very low usage. I think the standard thing organizations do is like, if we put it up and we find it's too low quality and everybody loves it and they're using it and it's worth more investment, we could assess that then. But I'm not sure why we would make a big, and I don't, the hard costs are one thing, staff time is what I'm most concerned with, which part of the hard cost. It still seems like option 1 happens to be lowest staff time also. Am I reading that correctly? Is that Chris for you? That's correct. Yeah, so.
I think it's pretty minimal, it's just on the setup time. It was 1 to 2 hours versus 2 to 4 hours.
Yes, I'd go with the lowest cost one. I would also ask, I don't know, was it considered just live stream audio? Does that reduce complexity? Do people really care about seeing the video, or is it just getting live access to what's being said? That how important is seeing the faces?
I guess I'll start off the deliberation with that question is like, is this something that we, just starting off, like I'd love to hear from like our board members, is this something that we even we are in compliant with Brown Act, we're doing pretty much what everyone, our surrounding neighbors are doing. With some exceptions of our bigger districts, and perhaps that makes more sense because they are spread out over a bigger geography. I mean, we are one school, like these are multiple, some of these campuses have multiple elementary schools, multiple middle schools, we have.
Well, I would say.
So I'm just curious, is this something where?
I would say Larkspur is doing it, Kentfield's doing audio only. Which is similar to what, well, we don't do it live. And I think that that's the issue. Given that the cost is low, I don't see why we wouldn't offer it to our community for them to be able to have access. Because it would make it easier if you know, hey, they're gonna be talking about this, but I wanna pop in and hear what the report is on Youth Truth, but I also have to make my kids dinner, I think it could increase engagement by our community. So, I guess given that the cost is low, it's not like $1,000, I don't see why we wouldn't.
Do you have a view on video, audio versus video? Like, what do you think?
The only reason I think about video is just, the proposal doesn't really talk about it, but it would be nice if the video could show the presentations.
Yeah, that's a separate.
But if we're on Zoom, maybe we can pop up, but we could also deal with that down the road too, see if people are engaging.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I feel just that our culture has embraced the ability to view a Zoom webinar or have it recorded and have the ability to go back. It's a non-engaging, type of medium, but many just, you think, oh gosh, I'm so sad I missed that. And then you have this wonderful aha when you can go to the site and click on the link and, oh good, I can watch it later or have that access to it. And if it's content that's relevant, it does drive engagement, I do think, and I think that's part of the goal, is we want everyone to feel that they are able to engage, and I think it opens up, transparency and communication and all the things that we're hearing in our community would desire. So, and to be fair, I am in agreement, this cannot be an interactive medium, that's not the intent. The intent is really just to be 100% transparent and to allow anyone who wants to attend in any way that they potentially, or be able to watch it, see what happened, see the presentations. And audio, it's wonderful to have, you can still go listen to, but it's not quite as robust. So I agree, and I do think more of a Zoom medium versus the wide angle. I don't know if you can really gather the content as much. If you're going to invest in it, let's do it at least to the extent that it's useful or more usable. At least that's where I'm leaning. And I really appreciate your point of, look, if we are able to increase engagement and it's a very valuable tool, then we can enhance it further. But I just think that we're there now with our community and webinars and recorded meetings.
Which option are you?
I lean toward option 2.
Option 2.
And also, just in comparison to some of our peers, many of them have sort of the Zoom component. I don't really know the Zoom YouTube. It seems like you could easily bring it over. Anyway, that's sort of
Can I just ask clarifying for staff? Staff time between option 1 and 2 on ongoing, is it the same? So it's just the setup time the first time, 1 or 2 hours difference. So that's not necessarily a huge
key thing, whether it's Zoom webinar or another software platform, is to then just to whoever's outputting the laptop to dial into the meeting and be a presenter so that the screen comes up. I think that's some of the most valuable visuals so they can follow.
Yeah, they don't need to see our face, they need to see this.
Yeah, if the little faces on the side or how it works, yeah, that's actually more important.
Okay. Are we ready to vote? Sure. Motion?
I'll make the motion to implement option 2 for streaming the.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that brings us to, little B, bond exploration, approval of tracking pole and bond timeline. That's what they was presenting on this one. This is Dr. Kim?
So being brought forward for your consideration of the scope of work by Equity 3 Research to conduct a tracking forward survey. It would be 12 to 15 minutes. It would be a follow-up survey with a random sample of 250 registered voters who are likely to vote in the November 2026 general election. This is the same firm that conducted the preliminary baseline survey on behalf of the district back in October and November of 2025.
Any questions?
Sorry, did you say timeline when you said launch and close?
Is looking at, I don't have a specific date and time in front of me.
May, plan, and that would help prepare for potential June vote for the board. Does that sound right?
It would, I was looking at the notes, it's late April, it would be the April 25th, right? Late April would sign up on the survey, surveys conducted May 5th and May 26th. And then May 26th, we have board group, we present results, and then we can vote, call for election on June, on one of the 2 June meetings. So this is rather time sensitive, because if we're going to do April 25th study session, we need, all this time to.
And when will we have the architectural renderings?
That is,
We're getting some next week.
Preliminary meeting scheduled with one of the sites to check in on their progress and to ensure that they're meeting our objectives for the year.
So we would potentially have 2 months. You know, and a half to communicate those renderings and get feedback and sort of discuss.
the sooner we can get the architecture plan. And then we have the whole messaging, like, communicated, then we got, yeah, it's about 6 weeks maybe, then conduct the survey, see if that makes it forward.
If we need to do this, Austin's a little second, I would get the deliberations, right? Any more questions for Dr. Kim?
Sorry, my question is, yeah, so was the architectural renderings next week, messaging, like, sort of a package that we communicated or discussed potentially be complete in the next 2 weeks?
And I just had one more just observational data point, that the tracking survey, even though it's targeting the same 250 interviews, would result, at least in this proposal, a lower margin of sampling error, possibly because it is a tracking survey as well. So the original survey had a margin of sampling error of 6.6%, and the tracking survey is estimating a sampling error of 6.2% for a target. Slight improvement.
Sorry, so they expect the sample to be higher for this one?
The sampling error to be
And then this one we're thinking will be,
They're still targeting 250. But of the 223 actual data points that were derived in the original survey, it had a 6.6% margin of sampling error. And this follow-up tracking survey, while still targeting the 250, the idea of it is to target a sampling error that is a little bit lower, so there's additional confidence on that additional data.
awesome, that's great. That's great. I think it's too. Just, so if they think that they're feeling good about getting as many, maybe more responses to this survey, that's great. Okay, thank you, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I think we need it in case we have our hearing with the too, so. We need to do it, and I can address all of our questions. My question that I would think is, like often I will take the survey for our person, present questions, present someone else, or put the survey on, look at questions this time, get more for. Are we allowed to do that? That hasn't been sort of.
And so we have two board members that have already had kind of similar information on that topic.
I mean, I love the idea of it, so potentially we could ask one of our lawyers, but I feel like that might not.
I'm okay having the same board members, because I think we know what we need to ask and what the outcome will be. I mean, I think my hesitation was, I would not invest in this survey if we are not doing something different as a board to communicate what the needs are. So since we are at that point and we feel confident that we will have about a month and a half to actually share renderings, potential costs, aligning with our master facilities needs, all of that can be wrapped up and communicated in a much more, I think, tangible way now. And that, I think, people can react to. And so I feel that the questions are gonna be really similar in a way. And I'm not sure if you can even put those renderings in the survey, but if you can, then you're reacting to something, whether before it was just sort of an idea, now it's more tangible. So I'm confident that the same board members can validate or share that. I think that they'll provide a good question that we can, dive into. I just think that if we decide today that we are gonna move forward with this, that we really need to feel confident that we're gonna get those renderings and messaging pretty quickly.
I agree with that.
But I do also think it's kind of critical to have the survey data before making a decision, because
I think this is incredibly valuable to us, and very good support.
And just that, because we're asking, we had 223 participants, and it was a 6.6%, like 95%, like CI. So they're hoping 250, they were hoping like a lot of last time. So just like we had 223 and it was quite challenging to get that. We're going into a special election in June, so I mean that we might be bumping up across things. So just so that you hear, because we were bumping up against something in the last survey too. What was that? There was an election on.
I think if we're looking at a similar margin there, if not better, that's great, even if it's a little bit worse. If if you're moving the needle 1 percentage point, 2 percentage points, that's gonna influence our decision making. If you're able to move the needle 5 or 6, so we're actually seeing some movement there, I think I would trust it, as long as if we only get 50 responses back, that's not gonna be very valid, but I think if we're able to get at least
that's what we learned from the previous survey, is that our community responds really well to education, and they're highly influenced by that, so I think it's worthy of another survey.
I will just echo your comments as this, like, this is only worth doing if we go out there and really engage the community prior to that. So we need to intentionally do that. Okay, you ready to vote? Motion? Approve the track and poll? Second, all in favor? Aye. Okay, we are moving on to K2C, approval of second interim budget report, and this is definitely Dr. Kim.
So the district is bringing forth for your consideration and approval, the district's second interim. And so what this is in fact, the board originally adopted the current fiscal year budget back in June 10th, before the academic fiscal year started. The board subsequently adopted first interim revision for the current year budget, and that was right before the holidays, and that's December 15th board meeting. This is the second interim, so now in March. It's bringing forth budget revisions up to the January 34 statutory budget date. So there's multiple dates here in play. But it's giving an update on the district's fiscal condition, providing budgetary updates on both revenue and expenditures in the current fiscal year, and then showing what the roll forward of those adjustments have on the subsequent two fiscal year projections as required by Ed Code. In summary, 10,000 for the view. There's what I would consider a non-material change, but nonetheless, there were many variables that went into that. On revenue, the district adjusted revenue down by $11,809 and reduced expenditure assumptions for the current year down by 1.2% to $416,000. So we decreased revenue, decreased expenditures budgeted for the current year by 1.2%. And the following presentation is going to detail those changes here. At its core, by statute, boards must file certification of the district's fiscal condition, and that is what is being presented here. That certification indicates that the district will meet its financial obligations in the current and the following two fiscal years, meeting the California state minimum reserve, at least in the current and subsequent two fiscal years. At this point, the district does recommend a positive certification. Okay, so I always start with where we are. I did bench this. We're full circle now, just about there. We reached the second interim budget update. Following this, on March 30th, we scheduled the fourth meeting, as Dr. McGrath alluded to earlier in the board meeting as well. Once we've aggregated the survey results and feedback from the community in regards to budgetary priorities, then as we approach the budget construction for the next fiscal year, we'll be bringing forward the results of that survey as an information item for the board as well. Okay, so this is a view of the first and interim variances, high level. Really hard to see because the revenue adjustments were quite small between first and second interim. So I think what would be most helpful is actually jumping right to the key variable revenue source components. Really, there was a increase in state sources in lottery funding, actually. So the district looks at state apportionments through, but that was offset by a reduction in truing up our local sources of revenue. And really, that's a routine reconciliation of our clearing accounts. So when we receive checks from vendors, returns, things of that nature, when we're looking at facilities, use permits that are coming in, we set out a budget, and as we're looking at those things coming in, we true up throughout the year. So due diligence that we do. On the expenditure side, Services and other operating expenditures represent 13%, with both supplies and capital outlay picking up additional 4%. In summary, the district still spends the majority of its budget on people. So the key variables on the expenditures here, the vast majority of that budget decrease is related to positions that were budgeted for but are unfilled in the current academic year. For example, there's a Spanish teacher position at Reed that has remained unfilled for the vast majority of the year. And so we've made a budget adjustment associated with that position. On the classified side, there was also a budget adjustment. They're specific to a campus supervisor position at Bel Air that has remained unfilled for the majority of the year as well. You'll see a reduction on the benefits costs as well. That's a driven benefits cost. So when a position is budgeted, the financial position control system will automatically assign a budgetary placeholder for assumed health and wellness and other statutory costs. So you'll see an adjustment to the benefits. There was also an adjustment made specifically to health and wellness as a category. So when we budgeted for health and wellness projected costs in the current year back in June, we put in a placeholder for the cost of health and wellness increases that actually hit in December. We have over budgeted just a bit out of an abundance of caution, and so we're making that adjustment down to true up as well. In supplies and services, there was a net increase, however, and really that's a reflection of the Proposition 28 funded equipment and supply purchases. In other words, the district had filed for an exemption so that the funds of Prop 28 from prior years didn't need to be returned to the CEP. Because we have received confirmation that we can hold it, now we're budgeting for use of those expenditures in the district's operating budget. So that brings us to the current year. As we look forward into the projection for the multi-year, we updated several variables. And the variables that were updated that changed between first and second interim are bolded here. Specifically, state cost of living adjustment projections, state COLA projections have been benchmarked down. This is based on the governor's budget as well as School Services of California, which provides these numbers. So COLA projections for 25-26 is at 2.3%. For 26-27, it's been benchmarked down from 3.08% to 2.41%. And projections at this time for 27-28 are at 3.06%. Parcel tax growth rates are set by law, by voter approval. 10-year Treasury forecasts have been adjusted out for 27-28. I can assure you that will change dramatically as we get closer to that. But again, that's based off of what big math that fiscal crisis management is advising districts forecasts off of this time. Foundation contributions to the net at $1.75 million, and all other variables for transportation revenue and special ed apportionments remain static, as was presented at first interim. In terms of the transfers income component, that is the projected revenue in from the district's tenant fund for non-preschool tenants, those projections remain as noted at first interim as well. So not a lot of substantive changes that are being brought forward here at second interim. There was more of a adjustment that was made at first interim, but this prepares us as we look at ending the year already, the fiscal year in the next subsequent months, to make the necessary adjustments and due diligence investments there. On the expenditure side, CalPERS contributions rates decreased slightly. Again, that's the district's contribution for every dollar for those classified employees that the district employs. And those percentages are correct for those individuals who may not be familiar. For every dollar that is compensated to an employee, the district contributes in 25-26, 26.8 cents to that dollar on behalf of that pension cost. But those are costs that are held or income by the Hopefully you'll note CPI, the Consumer Price Index, or specifically inflationary measures have been adjusted as well, but for 25-26, it was a minor adjustment to 3.37. Currently, the district is projecting inflationary pressures to increase over the following subsequent years as well. The second interim budget also maintained the district's contribution to the Service Trust Investment Account. That is the district's board-directed investment for years for funding its post-employee retirement benefits. This time, when I presented our current status update several months ago, I noted that we are about halfway through the fully funded. So what does that mean when you bring everything together? So we ended 24-25 basically break even. Basically, there was a net minor positive change to the fund balance. The district ended with 41.5% unrestricted reserve. That unrestricted reserve includes the district's board policy designated reserve of the 23 or 24%. In addition to the state mandated reserve of 3 or 4%. For the record, the reason I'm using the word "or" is because the state mandated reserve percentage changes depending on ADA. If you have more than 1,000, then you have 4. If you have less than 1,000, or vice versa, then you have 3. But it's a combined 27% of operating expenditures that are noted there. So the district ended with 41.5. With the adjustments, with step and column, with COLA being applied to the salary schedules, with all of the budgetary adjustments that we have made from adoption to first to second, the district's current budget proposal being brought forth to the board is budgeted to project a deficit of just over $1 million, which would reduce our fund balance from the 41.5% audited to a projected 36.5%. Based on all the other variables that I've updated in the budget model, the district's reserve position will continue to decline. However, I may note that it is a slight improvement in the forecast compared to what was presented at first. You'll note that the structural deficit increases from about $1 million back up to the 1.6. The reason for that is also including the additional counseling position that the board has approved as well, and then of course that matriculates forward into the operation. The district is going to be able to meet its cash flow needs for the current year, but nonetheless, it is the district's practice to bring forward as note in the month of June. And then a little bit of insight into the district's other funds. So as a point of re-education, everything I've talked about has been in Fund 1, the district's general fund. The district also has separate funds related to child nutrition. Our estimates at this point is that the district will end the fiscal year with approximately $200,000 based on the scope of, based on the contract that we are currently in with Revolution Foods and the reimbursements that the district will receive based on that from the state and federal sources. Deferred maintenance is just a statutory fund that the district has. If you remember back in the district side, there is a statutory shift over from the Fund 01 deferred maintenance over to Fund 14, and then we draw down Fund 14 for routine maintenance needs as well. The majority of maintenance and operations budget is not held in Fund 14. It is actually held in Fund 01 with the operating budget. Fund 25 is developer fees. That's with, for example, if a house makes an improvement in ADU, then the district collects a portion of that revenue from the permitting process. We share that revenue with the town district. But the district is going to utilize their budget to utilize some of that budget as well. But that's the point. It has to. The district must utilize the funds on forward the results of that community survey as an information item to the board at the April board meeting. Based on our timing, we have an opportunity to take that data and craft the parameters for the 26-27 budget and the subsequent 2 fiscal years. My hope is to then bring forward some sort of informational item in the May board meeting, depending on the very quickly increasing agenda for that. We'll see what's happening out there. And then that brings us to June, which is the budget for adoption, the official budget for adoption.
Just a little minor, so funds 212 and other gap, those don't exist.
They
Just
do
the
exist.
funds, oh, they do,
They
okay.
do, however, the district does not maintain those fund numbers. They exist in the standard county code structure throughout the state of California.
But we don't have,
We don't have that.
okay, so we only have the ones on that slide, those funds are.
That is correct. However, in the interest of transparency, there is one more fund, that is Fund 51, but that is related to general obligation bonds. At this point in time, as we are not actively utilizing it, it has to do with the ins and outs that the county uses to collect property tax revenue from residents and then to clear it out via the process that exists for returning it back to investors. Yeah. And there is no encroachment on that fund to the general fund in any way, shape, or form.
Thank you.
I know you shared this information, but can you just help me understand the developer fees and what we're allowed? So how we acquire them and what we're allowed to use them on?
Yes, of course. So, we call it developer fees. Tiburon and Belvedere may call it impact fees. And there are one-time charges assessed on residential or commercial developments, on construction within a district's boundaries. And the idea is that it's intended to help fund school facilities to accommodate enrollment. This is all authorized under California Ed Code. California Ed Code 17,620. The last time that the district commissioned the developer fee study was in September of 2015. So the district does have a future interest in commissioning a new study. The rates that have been developed for the rates that are being applied is $2.38 per square foot for residential construction and 54 cents per square foot for commercial construction. So then fee revenues are collected. The district signs off on check in hand based on the square footage of the application that's submitted. The application itself is collected at, for example, Tiburon City Hall offices. Once the district has affirmed and signed off, then the construction project is able to be completed in essence.
And then what percentage of that though, so, okay, that's an interesting process, thank you. What then, help me understand, we show a revenue intake of 84,000, but an expenditure of 123,000. And where does that go? Sounds like it's not going to us, it's going to a different school.
It's actually a two-part question. I'm glad you asked this. So 70% of every developer fee dollar that is received is held by REIT. And 30%
money we spent, and the top line revenue is our 70%. So, yeah, so that whole 100 something sounds like goes to our.
Yeah, so none of the expenses that you're seeing is money, that 30% that's going to, basically the revenue's being abated, it's not showing up as an expense.
Gotcha. Okay, that's helpful. I just wasn't sure.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent question. I appreciate that.
It looks like an example of new was when we added pre-K and facility changes. For example, it's a perfect example of you thought was allowable there.
Absolutely. So the original intent was, when this code was established, is you're building a new house. Theoretically, that house may come with children who may now enroll in your local public school, and so that was the thought process.
I have a couple, on the, I noticed it looks like we're projecting increased revenue from the Granada lease. Is that true, and is that because of the new lease agreement?
So the increased revenue from the Granada lease is tied to not the new lease agreement, but it's tied to revenue drivers that are built into the lease agreement that we have, which account for an increase. Let me rephrase that. The new lease agreements that are on an annualized basis have a built-in increase factor that is tied to CPI, consumer price index. However, the Granada increases are a little bit above that. It's been rounded up by the whole $1,000 as well. And so it's not a direct cut. So for example, I didn't take the current year and then just increase it by 3%, but it's a stepping up process as the years go. The district does and has presented the idea of generating additional lease revenue through the Granada site. We pose that as an option to budget advisory as well. And Eduardo at the Granada site is currently in the process of clearing out the central area that could be considered for additional tenant agreements in the future.
Sounds like great news, but the current budget is based on the existing leases we already have.
That is
So
correct.
if we're able to find more, then that money can go up.
That is correct.
Okay, that's all great news.
And that is not included in the forecast at this point in time.
And then the forecast for 2 years out, just to clarify that, we will go through a new negotiating cycle with our labor partners before we reach that. Those obviously built in because we don't know what that cell level will look like.
That is absolutely correct. So thank you for clarifying that. We are in 25, 26.
Settled for next year, right?
Settled for 26, 27. So all of the collective or the agreed upon contractual obligations, inclusive of step and column, are all included in this budget at this point in time, inclusive of the counseling position as well.
And inclusive of the Reed Spanish teacher, because we're still hopeful we can find more.
That is correct. So what the district has done is in 25, 26, while we remove the budgetary assumptions of the position that the districts were unable to fill but had an interest in filling, that budget for those positions were restored back into the 26, 27 budget.
But that one doesn't include the campus supervisors, we took it out and replaced it
That
with
is
counselors.
correct. So it includes all of the position updates that the board authorized in the prior board meeting as well, which removes the two campus supervisor positions from this model.
And adds the counselor and the Reed Spanish teacher.
Adds the counselor, adds back in the Reed Spanish teacher.
Okay.
So that's all in here, and we are settled. So it includes the agreed upon percentage increases for all certificated and classified staff. So that's all built into this model, which leads to that negative $1.6 million projected deficit. That moves forward, however, to your point, the 27, 28 forecast does not include the cost of collective bargaining settlements because the district has not yet engaged in collective bargaining for 27, 28. So that is a clear note to make here. With these assumptions in place, that does get us to the board policy directed 27%. But again, noting it does not include the cost of collective bargaining.
Well, and I note that it looks like the projected deficit that we're running in 26, 27 is pretty similar to the 27, 28. So we haven't yet figured out basically questions? Okay, so now we'll move on to public comment. Any public comment? Ready for deliberation? I'm gonna show you
I'll move to approve the budget.
well, and we're not approving, sorry, we're moving to approve a positive certification.
I will move for a positive certification of the revised interim budget.
All in favor? Last thing to us, to approval of the RUSD transportation plan, AD. And I believe, is that also you, Dr. Chen?
So EdCode provides school districts with a pupil transportation reimbursement equivalent to 60% of prior year transportation expenditure, excluding capital outlay and non-agency costs. But as part of that, the district needs to adopt a transportation plan. There are no substantive differences to this next year's plan as was compared to the prior. The key things is that transportation services are being offered, the district provides transportation at no cost to students with an IEP. That's through the Marin Pupil Transportation Agency, which is a separate JPA than the Tiburon Peninsula Traffic Alliance. But the district, through partnership with the Tiburon Peninsula Traffic Alliance, also offers complimentary local transit bus passes to qualifying low-income students to promote equitable access to school. So those two are